The National Emergency Management Agency has issued a red alert on flooding in 102 local governments in 28 states.
This was disclosed in the 2020 annual flood outlook released by the Nigeria Meteorological Agency and the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency. Now, 275 local government areas in 36 states and the FCT fall within the moderately probable flood risk areas, while the 397 local government areas fall within the low probable flood risk areas.
In Lagos, residents of 4 local government areas, especially those living on floodplains, have been told to vacate their homes immediately. These predictions are expected to have different kinds of impact on agriculture, water resources, health, transportation, and other infrastructure. Joining us via Skype is Philip Jakpo, Director of Programs, Corporate Accountability and Public Participation, Africa. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning. It's always a pleasure being on set.
Absolutely. Year in, year out, we'll talk about flood alert, telling people to perhaps move from one location to the other. But what does this really say of our level of response to this issue? Has it been appropriate enough?
Well, to go straight to your question, I think we have had this scenario year in, year out. Government raises the alarm. There's going to be flood in 36 states. There's going to be flood in 28 states. But the appropriate follow-ups are not what we've seen. It has been like that since 2012 when we had one of the most serious flooding in the country. I think at that point it was 21 states. But now we have a warning that it's going to be 28 states. So it is just alert. The complementary effort to make sure that there's some form of mitigation is not there. The Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency made the prediction in June. NEMA, which is supposed to respond to emergencies, has taken it up. But then some of the questions you will ask yourself is, NEMA that is raising this alarm, what do they even have on ground to ensure that those who are going to suffer from displacements are even reached in the first place? If you go to NEMA website, for instance, I think what it says there is they have one helicopter, and that helicopter is stationed in Abuja. So when you have people in remote areas who are caught up by flood, how do you reach them? So these are some of the things that we need to have in place. In the US and other places where you have, for instance, the hurricane season, I think the hurricane season starts in June through to November. There are always plans, for the people. In Florida, for instance, I will tell you that they even have planned, they have gone as far as planning socially distanced shelters for people who are going to be displaced by the hurricane this season. What do we have? Nothing. The alert system is good. We are getting better by the year. But then, like I said, the follow-ups on how to ensure that there are shelters in place and things like that, they are not there.
All right,
so that's the major
Philip.
problem.
Yeah, Philip, if I have to stay with you on the point you're making, what do you think is the greatest challenge in falling short in this response that you talk about?
I think one of the issues is that we don't have synergy between the NEMA at the national level and the state level. So the synergy is not there. So what we just hear is the kind of news we hear about floods coming. Even the sensitization that we expect, I think TVC is doing more sensitization than even the government is doing. Because what you are putting out here now, millions of people are watching this. But we only read some of these things in 1 or 2 or 3 papers, and then, it's not going further than that. People are not they are not preparing people in those places where evacuation, for instance, might be needed. The states are also not doing their part enough. Lagos, we've seen some actions. The drainages are being opened up, which is very, very good, unlike what we've seen in many years past. The drainages are opened up. The refuse that are pulled out are removed. So it will, of course, open the channels for water to flow. But on the other hand, what is the state also doing to ensure that we go beyond just these, surface actions? People are building on floodplains. Who is giving them permits to do that? There are reclamation exercises going on in places like Oroshoki and even the Lekki corridor. These things are happening there, and these things are going to aggravate the problems. We've heard, okay, Ibejuleki, I think Lagos mainland, Ikorodu, residents should prepare. How? I've mentioned what is happening in Florida, for instance. Social distance shelters. Do we have emergency shelters for people in those areas who will move? Remember, we're already in the COVID era. So when you say people should prepare and there's going to be displacement within that period, it means people will move from one place to the other, and then we're going to have an escalation of even the COVID-19 pandemic that is with us. So matching actions are the problems we have. We don't have matching actions, and that is what we really need to work on.
Now, I'd like for you to talk more on the impact, because you just touched on something that I believe is critical for the government and people to really understand, especially the impact on health, the impact on transportation and agriculture and every other areas.
Yeah, you've even mentioned them. So since we are going to have very, very unusual rains, which will extend beyond normal, it's going to affect agriculture. We don't have too many good roads. Roads are going to be flooded. People are going to be cut off. Those who are impacted are going to move from one place to the other. Even beyond that, we are going to see an escalation of people who are going to come down with ailments that are related to, floods. You have dirty water everywhere. So you are going to have a lot of crises which can easily be managed if we do what is right. And that is not happening.
All right, Philip, talk to us about the issue of housing patterns generally. The point there is, when we talk about urban planning and so on, how much of that can we reorganize? Because if you go to some neighborhoods, it seems the houses, the way they are patterned or planned, everyone is just discretionally doing what they want.
Because government is not doing what government is supposed to do. I don't think urban plans are the challenge we actually have. I think it is making sure that people adhere to these urban plans and then sanctioning those who go against these, the laws that we have. It is going to even be bigger than we think. If the rains are even going to be more than expected, what of the dams? The dams are going to overflow. And that is even going to, nobody is even talking about that. The dams are going to overflow. And when the dams overflow, or the dams are threatened, there's a likelihood the dams will need to be opened. And that will bring more water. That is exactly what happened in 2012 with the Lagos Dam in Cameroon. The dam was opened because there was the threat that there was going to be a breach if the waters, go beyond a certain level. And that will even make it worse. So the dams are also there. We have several dams across the country that will also be threatened. So it's a combination of actions at the national and state level. A lot of synergy, a lot of planning, a lot of walking the talk. And these are the things we are not seeing. It's very, very unfortunate because we have seen disaster coming.
All right.
And we have time to plan
quickly,
for it,
let me interrupt your thought for a second. We see in some other countries, like the East African countries, take up water harvesting. Is that an option we can look at this point? Well,
it's not a bad idea in that part of the world, but there are some basics, simple basics that we have not done here. So we cannot even start talking about harvesting water. Yes, in areas where you don't have enough rainfall, yes, they can do that. But now we are going to have more than adequate rainfall. And what is our major problem? It's going to flood a lot of places because of simple things that we should put in place that are not there.
All right, Philip Dakpo, thank you so much for talking to us on TVC.